Well, hello there, YouTube. This is Crazy Cool New Yorker coming at you today. Oh man, it's been a while since I vlogged. I've been uploading videos, but as I stated before, I kind of did a bunch of them because I knew with this training going on, it would take up a lot of my time. And then with the weather changing, when I didn't have to train or I wasn't bogged down with, family stuff, and I wanted to ride, the weather was just not cooperating. So it's almost been, 2.5, almost 3 weeks of me being on my baby right here, talking about withdrawal. And my wife knew, we got up this morning and she made a really nice big breakfast and said, the weather's nice, it's cold, you're going riding? And I said, yes, I am. She knew it. There was no escaping it. So her and the baby's going to either stay in for a little bit, or she's starting to get his Christmas list together. And he likes Angry Birds. So that's going to be on his list for today. For Christmas, one of the stuff that we get him. We try to, he's 3 years old, so he's really going to be able to appreciate the gifts that we give him. We're not sure if we're going to let him know if there's a Santa Claus or not, but he's still going to have a very nice Christmas. I had a very nice Christmas growing up. My parents went all out for us, and it's something that I love doing, and I'm going to go all out for my son. So what have you guys been up to? I've been watching a lot of vlogs, and it's been, very interesting. You guys put up some really good videos, man. You know who I'm getting jealous of? Memphis Mike and Chris Caliente. They're eating some of that delicious barbecue. I just want to get on my bike and ride out to Memphis, Tennessee, and get some. Did you see the last video they put up? I was just like, oh man, I got to get me some barbecue. Now, I make a good barbecue, but, so it's nice to try someone else's and compare, and it's nothing better than a good barbecue dinner. Oh, my goodness. Barbecue sauce dripping down, whether it's smoky or sweet or spicy. I love it all. I do. I even do barbecue spaghetti sometimes. If you never tried it, give it a shot. It really is good. So, what is the topic today? Well, I think I'm going to discuss cruiser or sports bike. Now, what brought this topic up was my wife and I, we went to into the city, and a couple of my old buddies that I used to ride with, they still ride, but because I'm so far up and it's just so busy, we don't really connect that much on the bike. We are making plans to do a lot of riding together for 2016, so you'll see that. I was kind of disappointed because when they're together and riding and I'm up here, sometimes they're coming up and I'm at work or something of the vice versa. When I reach out to them, they're one of them is at work, so we never really got everyone together. So this time we made a nice package. We was actually at as I stated, a friend's house in the city, and we all have kind of like mutual friends, and we all just came together. So when I was there, one of my buddies, he asked me, like, why did you go for the cruiser? Why didn't you get another sports bike? Because he actually stopped riding for a little bit. He got married, and I think he stopped for like 4 or 5 years, and then he got himself another sports bike and stuff like that. And I said I wanted something different. I did the sports bike when I was younger. It was great. I'm not going to knock it. But I wanted a cruiser. I wanted an adventure bike. I wanted a cruiser. I was flipping back and forth. I wasn't sure. So then one of his buddies, I didn't know who he was, he said, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between the two? Because he's interested in getting a bike. And I said, well, there's a lot of difference between the two. And he's tall like me. So I said, well, because you're so tall, he's actually maybe about 6'3". I'm 6'2", so he's a little bit taller than me. I said, well, when I was on my sports bike, it was great for city riding. You know, all your weight is on the center of the bike, but it's kind of pushed forward. So when you're braking, the position that you're in, you're kind of more towards pressure on your arms and wrist. You know, that was how it was back in the days. Now I'm sure they probably gave it a more neutral balance. But my position, because the handlebars were low, and I said, so I always felt that after riding, my wrists were a little bit, tired, especially if I did, two up, if I had a friend, a young lady on the back of the bike or something like that. And I said, but what I hated the most was after long rides, my back would bother me. Now, when we rode, we mostly did, in a city. Then if we called ourselves going far, we did the Merritt, the Bronx River to the Taconic, 95 going north. We always headed north. Sometimes we would head out to Connecticut or Jersey, but we always headed north. That was what we considered long distance riding. But when we were just cruising, we still did a lot of riding, but we just did it through the streets. We would go from the Bronx to Brooklyn, the Bronx to Queens, and I mean, we're way out in Brooklyn. And that was maybe a good two-hour stretch to get out there. But you're young, you don't care. You're showing off your bike, you're revving it up at the stoplights and acting stupid and foolish. But that's what we did. I'm not going to knock it. Another thing I told them is, like, with the sports bike, you're young, you get that adrenaline rush. I mean, I recommend it. I mean, if you're young, you probably don't want to be on a cruiser. And yes, there are cruisers with some mad punch out there. Don't get me wrong. But if you are in the city, that's what's more agile. I think that's why sports bike are much more popular than sports bike are more popular than cruiser style bikes in the city, because they're agile. Yes, you have the blazing snap-on speed. Even a 600 is powerful. Mine was an R6, so I had crazy power. But it was just agile in the streets. She was able to maneuver very easily through traffic. And of course, everybody loves the sports bike because the ladies love it, and the fellas like how the ladies look on the back of their bike. And we also like how they look when they're riding the bike. But another thing I told him is what he has to be careful about. If he's not getting a sports bike with ABS braking, he has to watch out for that threshold braking with the front brake, because in an emergency situation, you can grab the brake and bow, down you go. Now, my buddy, of course, was saying, well, cruisers are slow, and, cruisers are big and bulky. That's why he didn't like it and stuff like that. And I was like, no, cruisers are not slow. They may be big. That he is correct on. Let's see here. I don't think I have to drop it down anymore. I just roll right in. I said, no, my bike is not slow. Now, what I did get the advantage of is, if I'm in the city, I can't split through cars like how I used to. Like, they can go through the cars and, slowly go through traffic and stuff. Because of how wide my bike is, I just can't do that. But then I told them, being with this cruiser, I can ride for hours at a time. Hours at a time. And I don't feel anything. I told them I'm about to put the backrest on the bike. I want to add that to even make the ride even better. My seat is really comfortable, and great wind coverage, but I'm not knocking the sports bike. I had one. And then he said, well, what about riding two up? I said, well, that's the best thing about it. I said, when I was riding and I had a young lady on the back, all her weight was, if she didn't know how to sit, and you got to teach people how to sit on the bike, but if you had to do a stop or something, she didn't know how to hold her weight, or she didn't know how to put her pressure onto your waist where she's not literally rocking you back and forth, it became fatigue. And sometimes they would do that. Even if they know how to ride properly, you never know, they could rest on you or something like that. And yes, they are getting a comfortable ride and stuff, and you ride and lean together, but it's fatiguing. It beats on the body. And I remember when I was younger, I would love it, but I was like, man, tired, riding through this, take a trip upstate and you got a girl on the back and you're just a little tired. But on my cruiser, I don't feel fatigue. I said, with 2 up, I said, yes, the bike is heavy. Don't get me wrong, the bike is heavy. And now I just made it heavier by adding an extra person on it. But it's just built for it. I mean, now we're both sitting on the bike. Well, with the Victory, they kind of made it so you sit in the bike. Like a sports bike, you kind of sit in the bike as well. Back in the days, cruisers, they said you kind of sat on the bike. Now they're making it so it's everyone's more neutral sitting in the bike, so to give it more of an even balance. I said, I sit in my bike, so I'm not getting beat up by the elements. I'm actually a little bit lower. Now, my bike is tall to be a cruiser. You know, there are cruisers that are much lower, much closer to the ground, but my bike is tall for a cruiser, but it's not as high as the adventure bikes. And I told them, you know, your passenger feels more secure. I said, when I throw my wife on the back, she leans back and she's got this big plush padded backrest to lean against. And if she wants to lean up against me, she can. You know, I lean up against her and it's not throwing the bike off. When I was on my cruiser, I just couldn't do that. You know, I was more so hunched over and riding, and the elements in your brain is thinking about every move and how you're going to pass this guy, and you're whipping through traffic. It was fun. Oh man, it was great. But I don't want to do that no more. So I told him the best thing he should do is test drive a bunch of bikes. You know, see which works for him. Now I was honest. I said I would not get an adventure bike because he was about the same age as all of us. So it was either in his late 30s, early to mid 40s. I said I would not get a sports bike. If I was you, I would get more of a touring style bike that handles like a sports bike. I said even look at the adventure bikes or look at a cruiser, but get the big one, you know. Now he said he's ridden before, so he has a little bit of background on riding. So and then everybody was telling him to go get something that's used first, and then you know, work your way up. And I agreed, but then I said if that's your financial situation, you may have it where you can only buy one bike, and you know, and it'll take you a while to trade that one in. So I said, if you're going to buy a used bike, get something that you can handle and it's pretty good. Yes, you're going to drop it, but you know, don't finance a used bike. If you can find somebody with a $500 or $600, that's maybe $1,500 or less, get it, and then practice for a whole summer on that, and then go get the bike that you want. It doesn't take much to build up your skill and confidence. No, I shouldn't say that. I take that back. With some good riding, you could build up your confidence and skill to a bigger bike. So that's what I recommended. Hopefully, you know, he gets whatever he's comfortable with. You know, they was all pushing for him to get, you know, like the 1100, the new 1100 Ninja or something like that. I was like, dude, he doesn't need that. I mean, they were showing the pictures, and I explained to him, I said, you're going to be laying basically down on the tank all the time. I said, you don't want that. Your back will be killing you. You'll love the adrenaline, but you'll hate it after a while because you'll get off and it'll just be like, oh, my back. Oh, you'll be doing that back stretch every time you get off. So I just gave the best advice I could. I know there's a big difference between sport bikes and cruisers. I mean, braking, you know, you're more towards the wheel of the bike. Is more when you brake hard, unfortunately, all your weight shifts forward, and it's a lot of that geometric squat is put onto the front tire, which you can then get some lift on the back tire. But with the cruiser, you can brake hard as you want, but there's a lot of weight on that back tire, so you're not lifting the bike up. I mean, you've really got to be jamming pretty hard and moving really fast to lift that back tire up on a cruiser. And if you're riding 2 up, I told him, I said, if you're riding 2 up, if you have to do an emergency stop and you're on a sports bike, there's always more of a chance of you lifting that rear tire up, because everybody's going to lean forward as you swing hard. You grab hard on them brakes. While on a cruiser, you grab hard on them brakes. You're not lifting up. You just got to keep the handlebar straight and steer to where you want to go. That's why I kind of push ABS braking too. I said, whatever you do, don't get no bike without no ABS braking. And it's funny, because then one of the guys, when I said that, he said, I like my bike without ABS braking. And he said he likes to feel the braking. I said, dude, you can feel the braking on ABS braking. I mean, you're not just, grabbing and letting the bike, you're isolated from the brakes. You feel everything. I said, people did this when ABS braking became mandatory on cars in the 80s. Everybody hated it. They was like, I got to put ABS braking. I'd rather pump the brake. No. Now, people wouldn't even think about getting a car without ABS braking because they realize the advantage. And believe it or not, I believe they're going to pass a law where ABS braking is standard on all bikes. So you have to be prepared for that. That's why I got my bike with ABS braking. I could have easily bought something that didn't have ABS braking, but I wanted that extra feature. I wanted that extra safety on my bike. I wish this bike had traction control. There wasn't too many cruisers out there that have traction control. The only one I know of that's kind of standard is Honda. I think they put ABS and traction control almost on all their bikes these days. So hopefully, whatever he gets, he's happy with it. I just, said, cruiser or sports bike, I wouldn't do it over again. I would still go for a cruiser, or I would go for an adventure bike, either or. I like that adventure bike. I like the height of it. I would have to, if I knew what I knew today, it would still be a hard toss-up between the two because I love my Victory. And I hope I plan on keeping it for a very long time. But that was it. I was just rambling. Hopefully you guys enjoy this video. And maybe it'll spark up some good conversation. It's been a while since I've been asking questions. So, I'm going to end it with this is Crazy Cool New Yorker signing off. And as always, ride what you love and love what you ride. Thank you.